Are you running GDP Portals? Ever wondered how to change a seal, how to change a bearing? Well, today we're going to show you how to do it all. So let's get started. So we've got our 6-inch portal here on the table with a few basic hand tools. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and remove these 2 Allens. We're going to remove this bolt completely, and then we're going to leave about 3 threads on each of these 2 bolts here. So like I said, you just want to make sure that you have at least 3 threads. So 1, 2, 3. There's plenty enough there. So we're going to grab a hold of the output shaft, take the box up off the table, and take a rubber mallet and hit each of these bolts on the head until it separates the box. And go ahead and remove these bolts completely. I'm going to set them aside. Then you can grab 2 pry bars, 2 screwdrivers, anything like that. Just going to go right up underneath. Just pry up. Just kind of work your way around until it completely separates the box. Just take your old gasket, lay it aside. We're not going to be reusing it. So we have our lid side and the housing side. Go ahead and pull all of the gears out and just set them aside. Sometimes this gear right here will get stuck. What you can do, take your finger, stick it inside, hold the housing up off the table just a little bit, give it a few whacks and it'll come right out. Same with this gear, sometimes it'll get stuck. Try to wiggle it out of there if it's not going to come out. Grab a hold of the gear. So now that all the gears are removed, we're going to head over to the press and we're going to press our output shaft out. You just want to lay it up here on your press. You want to make sure it's good and flat. Just make sure you know it's not going to slip out of the way once you go to pressing on it or anything like that. So we got it where it's in a good location. Gonna throw some safety glasses on here. We're just gonna start pressing this output shaft down and out until it comes out just like that. The next step is gonna be to remove the bearings from the housing as well as the lid of the portal box. There's a few different ways to do it. You can get a blind bearing removal tool, which will go right inside the bearing and then pull the bearing out. But today we're going to be showing you how to remove them by heating the box up. We're going to do this by making sure whenever we're heating the portal box or the lid that we work the heat in a circle form just like this. And we're going to continue to do that until we get it hot enough to where the bearings will get knocked out. You just want to make sure that you heat around the bearing and not directly down on top of the bearing. Then once we got it good and hot, we're going to grab a hold of the portal and then just slam it straight down. Now the idler gear bearing fell out, we're going to get the other 2 bearings out. Then once we've heated on it pretty good, we're just going to grab the sides again, slam it right out. Looks like our thrust bearing came out as well. Sometimes once you get that aluminum hot enough and you slam it down, all the bearings will come out at once. So now we're going to head over to the housing side of the portal. We're going to set this aside and let it cool down. So we're going to start with this center bearing. Go ahead and remove your dowel pins as well. Sometimes they'll just pop right out. If they don't, there's a through hole here. You can just take a small punch and just punch them right out. So we're going to go ahead and remove the idler gear bearing right here in the center. And we're just going to grab a hold of the housing. Looks like our top bearing came out. Let's see if we can get this middle bearing out. Looks like our other bearing. The last one in there is the center, the idler gear bearing. We're going to have to heat it up just a little bit more here. There we go. All 3 of our bearings are out of the housing. Now we're going to head on over to the press. So we've let both halves of our box cool down. We're gonna be pressing our bearings into the lid side. So we're gonna go ahead and sit the lower portion of the housing, the big side of the housing aside. We're gonna grab a thrust bearing, a double sealed bearing, and then our idler gear bearing. On the idler gear bearing, you just wanna make sure whenever you go to install it, you take the inner race out. That way it looks just like this. We're gonna head over here to the press. So we're gonna take our idler gear bearing, we're gonna slide it right into position. We're gonna get it as straight as we possibly can. If you run out of stroke, which it looks like we're going to, you can just get a big socket, just get it to where it's laying on the outer portion of the bearing. Then just go ahead and press it in. Looks like we got this bearing fully seated. So we're gonna go ahead and set our socket aside. We're gonna rotate the box around. We're gonna grab our thrush bearing and install it right here. The thrush bearing will be the biggest one. It's gonna come in the rebuild kit. Again, you just wanna make sure we get it as centered as we possibly can before we start pressing on it. We got it pretty good in center. I'm gonna go ahead and put the press down. Looks like we're gonna run out of stroke on this one. So we're gonna go ahead and grab our socket again. And on this one, we wanna make sure that we get on the inner race only. If you go to the outer race, you could potentially damage the bearing. You could potentially blow the housing out, and it's gonna put too much side load and too much pressure on the case. So this socket fits just about perfectly on the center of the race. We're gonna go ahead and press it in. You wanna run this press down until you can kind of hear that it's, getting in a bind, it's starting to get tight. And this bearing should be sitting just like this. It's not gonna fully seat down in the hole, just like this bearing, and this bearing won't either. So just that little lip hanging up, that's perfectly fine. We're gonna go ahead and let the tension off of our press. We're gonna press in the double sealed bearing, which is gonna go right here. So we're gonna go ahead and take our double sealed bearing, get it laid into place up here at the top of the portal box. Make sure we get it as straight as possible, just like any of the bearings we're gonna be pressing in. We're gonna get our socket in place, and we're gonna go ahead and start pressing it down. Again, you see there's just gonna be a little lip here. We waited till our press was starting to bind up a little bit. We know it's fully seated. We're gonna go ahead and set it aside. So whenever we pressed our output shaft out of our lid, our thrust bearing stayed on, which is super common. There's nothing wrong with that. But we need to press the output shaft off the bearing. So we're gonna take this right here. So we have our press set up to press this bearing off. We're just gonna take a socket, set it on top here. That way we're pushing at the very top. We don't wanna get into the splines at all. We're gonna get this as centered as possible, and we're gonna go ahead and press the bearing off of the shaft. So there we go, we got our bearing off of our shaft. We're gonna grab our output shaft. We're gonna slide it through so that the side with the threads on it is facing down. And this spline side is facing up. So we're gonna get it lined up, make sure we got it in a good position here. Press this shaft in. We're gonna use a long 29mm socket. Just sit it just like this. We're gonna make sure we get the shaft as straight as we possibly can. Once we have everything lined up, we're gonna go ahead and press this shaft in. All right, and this is where you're gonna know when it's fully seated, when the splines are laying down on top of the race, just like this. And now our lid is done, minus installing the seals. So we're gonna go ahead and lay the other side of the portal up here. We're gonna grab our idler bearing. We already took the race out of it just like we did on the lid. And we have two double sealed bearings here. We're gonna go ahead and lay them all into place. Get them all started straight. Then we're going to start pressing them in. We're going to start with the idler again. So we're going to take our socket, get our bearing lined up. We're going to go ahead and start pressing it. There we go, that one's fully seated. We're going to move over here to one of our double sealed bearings. Go ahead and press it right in as well. That one's good and seated. We're going to press our last one in here. There we go. All of our bearings are good and seated. As you can see, they will have just a little bit of a lip hanging up out of the box there. So now we're done with the press. We're gonna come back over here. We're gonna start reassembling this box. First thing we're gonna do, we're gonna take our drive gear. And on this one, you wanna make sure that this side that has a bevel is going towards the inside of the box. So it should be sticking straight up. Just gonna get it lined up just like that. Once we have it started down in there, we're just gonna take our hammer and just knock it straight in until it fully seats, and then just spin it, make sure the bearing's spinning good. Then we're gonna take our idler gear. We're gonna install our race to one side, just like that. We're gonna go ahead and get it lined up. And it should just slide right down into place. Just like that. You're just gonna make sure that these gears are flush with each other. Then we're gonna take our driven gear and just lay it down in there just like that. Super simple. And we're gonna take our gasket. We're going to install it. You can guide right off the dowel pin, so it should just sit just like this. And we're going to take the race from the lid side idler bearing. We're just going to knock it right down onto our idler gear here. Just like that. That way it's fully seated. Then we're going to grab our lid. Get it all lined up. Just kind of go around, hit it with your hand just a little bit there. And we're going to grab a rubber mallet, applying pressure on this side. And you just want to hit the box all the way around until it fully seats all the way around. Once it's done that, we're going to grab our seals. We're going to grab our 40mm seal and install it right here on the output shaft. A lot of times you can press it in pretty close by hand, and you'll take a hammer and just kind of go through and tap it down. You should be able to go around and feel it. It should be flush. And we're going to go ahead and start a couple of our bolts in the box here. It shouldn't want to come apart. They press together pretty hard there. But just in case, we're just going to roll it over to the back side. We're going to install our seal here. Again, you just want to make sure that it's flush all the way around. Just like that. And the last thing to do is to put your bolts back in. Make sure you torque them to the spec, which on the 6-inch, these bolts are going to be 60 foot-pounds. You want to torque them down. This bolt right here will be removed because that's where your brake caliper mount's going to go. With these two lower bolts down here, can be torqued to 60 foot-pounds. Then you want to make sure that you use the short Allen-headed screw out here. Then the longer one needs to go over here on this side. Tighten all them down, add some oil, reinstall it on your machine, and that's how super easy it is to rebuild a GDP portal. For more information on our portals or any of SuperATV's great products, feel free to give us a call at 855-743-3427 or check us out online at superatv.com. Thanks for watching and have a great day.